So there's our question. And obviously with YouTube you can just pause it and then you can see it for as long as you like. But this idea of it being superior, and we have talked about that quite a lot in our lessons. So let's now look at our revised plan. So what have we managed to come up with? How would we start this particular essay? Dylan?
Outline the model.
Okay, so the first thing we might do is outline Cattru's model. What is that model? What are the three circles? The inner, the outer, and the... Thank you. And which is which? What do they represent? Or who do they represent? Rachel?
It's in the native speakers, which are us and the USA.
Yeah. So we have British Standard English and American Standard English. Yeah. And there are others, aren't there, as well? Australian Standard English. Yeah. The outer are who? Who's in the outer? The inner's the easiest, but who's in the outer? Dylan?
There's a problem I've got India as well.
Yep, good. Through what process did they become part of the outer? Curtis? Yeah, fab. And then the expanding circle, who's there? Who is there? Alex? Such as? Yeah. Okay, so those countries that perhaps have, so they know some English, perhaps they know the nouns, perhaps they just know those concrete, almost in that first stage of acquisition, if you like, or one of those stages of acquisition where it's just nouns. Okay, so that's what we're thinking about here. But we need to not lose sight of the question. In this model, how does it show that British Standard English would be superior? Curtis?
We should talk about English as a universal language.
Yeah, good. The idea of globalisation. Yeah, get those lines in there. English is a universal language. It's a global language, albeit it's been enforced upon people, but that's part of it, isn't it? Okay. So, how can we evaluate, or how can we add AO1, or what would you do with these components? Because it's one thing, obviously, outlining and explaining, but what can we add to this? What else have you got in your plans? We're all being very quiet, and you've had quite a lot of time to plan for this, so you might have to pick on people. Curtis?
Examples.
So you would add examples of the lingua franca, of kind of Commonwealth. I'd put in pidgin language here, maybe. Thinking about a blended language, maybe. So you put in some examples. What else would you put in there, or is that enough? Dylan?
Would you now start the analysis and like say how it is superior?
Yeah. So how it superior. Okay. So how do we start this off? Somebody give me an introduction to this, because you want to talk about the question as well. Rachel.
Did you say something about, like, the argument that it's about in the circle and more prestigious language, the further out it goes, the further away it gets from the true or the best English?
Okay. So I would also think about introducing this with standard English as well. You want to give some context to the English language. So maybe have standardisation as a process as well. Okay, so as a universal language, English is deemed to be superior to other languages. So I'd be as broad as that to start with, and then I'd zoom into what is British Standard English. Okay. This can be argued. This can be argued. As a universal language, English is deemed to be superior to other languages. This can be argued by the process of colonisation, whereby the British Empire forced native speakers to learn their language. To learn English as their language. Okay, so something like that. It doesn't have to be that. As a universal language, English is deemed to be superior to other languages. This can be argued by the process of colonisation, whereby the British Empire forced native speakers to learn English as their language. From, how can we describe that? I don't want to say from different colonies. To learn English as their language. Okay, so that will do. All right. So our first point then. I'm going to start with standardisation, because I want to talk about how British English language is superior. Okay. What is British Standard English? What is it? And how do you know what it is? It's hard.
Because it's like the regulated version, so everyone has an understanding.
Okay, good. So it's the one that we learn collectively as a country, yeah, in our schools. Okay. Okay. British Standard English. Sorry if my writing's very scruffy. British Standard English is learnt by all native Um, At primary school, we are introduced to the sounds of words through phonics. And the how can I put that? So at primary school we are introduced to the sounds of words through phonics, and then this is developed into a spelling system taught through the alphabet. Okay, so essentially this obviously regulates and means that we've got a standardised English. So I'll put that in there as well. This is regulated through the curriculum and therefore now, whether students pick that up at the same level, obviously, is something to be considered. But it's this idea, isn't it, that all natives learn English the same. Okay, where do I go now? What do I talk about now? Because you're saying now we've got a standardised English within English. Think about your plan. What can I put in there now? Because I don't want to go too contexty, which there's fear of doing now, isn't there? Because we're talking about standardisation. So when did standardisation happen, people? Who's got the date? This is good, we're looking at notes. No good looking at me. Look at your notes.
18th century. The whole
18th century. I want a specific date. What kick-started standardisation? Charlotte had her hand up nice and politely. It was. Yeah, 1476. So the printing press kick-started that. Standardisation is a process that's still ongoing. As we update our dictionary, that's when standardisation... There is obviously this... There's that question, isn't there? This period where... And that's exactly what Ellie talks about in the response. This period of prestige. But we don't know when that prestige